I am Joe Gig Werks. I'm the managing partner here at Gig Werks, and be kicking off today's webcast. Today we're going to be discussing about full lifecycle content management with SharePoint 2013. We'll be discussing SharePoint itself and some third parties that we work with that are valuable partners that really help to bring together an end-to-end solution for creation all the way through records declaration and all points in between. So today, I'll give the general introduction about who we are. I'll do an overview of what's new in 2013 from an ECM perspective, Enterprise Content Management perspective, and then talk about how to achieve the full lifecycle content management within SharePoint 2013, and what we're going to show is applicable to a wide range of industries and use cases. But today we're just going to refer to a couple of use cases, and then in December we're going to be going deep into the specific use cases, just so we can put context around the solution set. So to begin at the beginning, as to who we are, I began the company in 2002. I'm the founder and managing partner of the firm, and we've been a gold partner since I created the company. We have a very deep relationship with Microsoft. This relationship has value not just to Gig Werks, but through extension to our clients. I'll just talk a little bit about that relationship and then tie it back. We are, among a number of things here, we are virtual technology specialists for the Microsoft New York Enterprise Group. New York Enterprise Group for Microsoft deals with Fortune 500s, Fortune 100s, and we work with Microsoft. We have Microsoft email addresses to go into their top customers and help them work through and explain the benefits of SharePoint to that client. As a consequence of that program, our folks have access to the internal Microsoft systems, all the case studies, white papers, technical articles, et cetera, and so forth, that very, very, very few partners, can count them on a couple of hands, have access to. We've also won several awards over the last 4 years consecutively with Microsoft, and other awards outside of Microsoft within the industry, as well as we've now been in the last 3 partner evidence programs for SharePoint, 07, 2010, and 13. And what the partner evidence program allows Gig Werks to do is have access to the very earliest iterations of the platform a full year before the actual formal release of the product set. We do have, this slide is old, we have experience in a number of industries across professional services, legal being one of them, financial services, architecture, engineering, and healthcare and pharma. And we have a deep market focus from 100 seats to 150,000. While headquartered in New York, we do have clients across the U.S. and Canada. So why Gig Werks for SharePoint? That training and that because of that relationship with Microsoft, the advanced training and access to resources, our guys were one of a handful of folks to get trained on the new Office 13 development platform, a whole bunch of other things. And this training and information that we receive and have benefit of, clearly to my mind has benefit for my clients as well. Simply put, we're so well heeled in it, we're not essentially learning in our clients' time. And we bring that intensive training and access to information to our clients and to our clients' benefit. Also, we've focused on the platform for quite some time. The company began with advanced infrastructure and custom development as its practice, but we have solely focused on SharePoint now for 7 or 8 years. With that, we're not Johnny-come-latelys to the game, right? So there's a lot of companies out there now that have sort of recently entered into the arena, but this is what we do at SharePoint. And with that and that long history of working with SharePoint going back to 2005, we have expertise around the full capabilities and extent of the product, as well as the underlying Microsoft stack that you have to have expertise in if you're really going to bring about a fully scalable and robust enterprise solution. Also, as we've journeyed through the SharePoint world over the last several years, we've come to recognize and work with a number of the top third parties in the channel, such as HiSoftware, Nintex, Collabware, and Intelledox, Accusoft, Understanding that we're not here to reinvent the wheel on our customer's dime, that if there are appropriate third parties out in the field that can offer immediate value and while reducing risk and ensuring maintainability, we work very closely with those companies and bring their possible solutions to our clients. Additionally, we have, sorry, Ricky, can you just send out a cast to people to stop? Excuse me 1 second, folks. Sorry, I'm just way too popular here. So we have a number of quick start offers around SharePoint planning. Right now in the fourth quarter, we're offering a discount on planning as a lot of our clients are looking to their budgets for next year. This works out well for both sides. And we also have a program called SharePoint Advisory Services. SharePoint Advisory Services is also a very popular item with our clients, where either as a consequence of having done projects with our clients or in lieu of, our experts will validate architecture as well as solutions and help troubleshoot InfoPath forms, whatever it may be. And so this retainer allows you access to the group of experts that we have here at SharePoint. We have a SharePoint 3-day staging and development workshop, extremely timely. As everybody's looking at 2013, you might be running 07 or 2013. Day 1, we build a staging environment, best practices. Day 2, we go over admin and feature capabilities, frequently these days contrasting earlier iterations of the product. And then day 3, we actually do a contextualized workshop where our clients go, hey, we were interested in increasing business intelligence inside the place, so we'll take some use cases internally, build out Power Pivot, whatever the applicable thing would be, workflow, you name it. We also have quick starts around business intelligence, branding, and line of business integration. In terms of webcasts, tomorrow we have a webcast for our legal friends around secure file transfer and document management. And then the one that I'm most excited about is beginning of the week of December 9th, where we're going to repeat today's webcast on that Monday, but the subsequent Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday, we're going to go deep into each of the elements that we're going to surface here today as it relates to content management. So in short, Tuesday, document generation, Wednesday, regulatory and security, redlining and markup and and review of content, and then finally records declaration, which brings you from the cradle to the grave. It's a standard slide I have in all my webcasts. For those of you who have joined us before, I just ask your patience as I go through it again. Even today, as a lot of people are using SharePoint, they're still using SharePoint, I would argue, somewhat reactively, looking at it almost as an ASPX development platform, as opposed to this highly holistic and integrated platform that allows you to get more value through the sum of the parts being greater than the whole. So what I always talk about in this regard is, if you're doing content management, for instance, to the point of today's webcast, well, line of business data that you can pull in through composites represents valuable metadata in a single source of the truth. If you bring in your metadata from your CRM or your ERP system to populate metadata within your content, well, certainly search works better. And as you're moving this content around, we're back to composites with workflow, and this is sitting in sites, and your communities participate in it. And it is really tantamount for success within SharePoint to have an eye to the exploitation of all its capability as you look at a specific business need. So with that, let me just get into some of the core improvements around SharePoint 2013 itself. And so ECM has been a big part of SharePoint now for many, many years. Having used the product and service customers from 2003 on, look, I don't think I'll be surprising anybody that in 2003 it was a bit of a toy as it represented document management. But in 07, you really started to see the viability of SharePoint as a document management platform really start to blossom and emerge. By the time you get to 2010, where you have managed metadata and retention policies, it was really very apparent that this was a very serious competitor for DMS in the marketplace. And now most recently with 2013, you have yet even more enhancements and improvements. One of the things I like to talk about is from a storage perspective, you now have what's known as shredded storage. For those of you who are on the technical side of today's cast and have used SharePoint previously, every version within a library in SharePoint represented a full binary, a full copy that would cause a significant amount of bloat within an environment. They had remote blob storage to address this and a couple other things. But now what you have is a true form of elegance in what's known as shredded storage, where if you go in and you change the font on a document, you shouldn't have to save the whole document. You should only save that one change, that delta. And 2013 does that now. Let's talk a little bit more about retention policies. Retention policies are one of my favorite things. They were new in 2010. Sadly, as a technical guy, this gets me rather excited. But so heretofore in 2010, you were able to create retention policies based upon content in a library. So it's a legal contract and statutory says 7 years. You can programmatically obsolescence it, move it to Record Center, multi-stage. So send out an alert, we're going to move it to Record Center. A year later, we're going to delete it, whatever it may be. And retention policies themselves are absolutely essential to protect the legal interests of an entity. E-discovery, should you be the unfortunate recipient of such an event, really can leave the floodgates open to other things popping up that just are not good for the enterprise. So, you know, I'm not being politically partisan here, but if you look at the Whitewater event, back to the Clinton years, they went after Whitewater and they came up with Monica Lewinsky because e-discovery allowed them to open up what they could look at. Well, document retention or document destruction, as I like to refer to it, is absolutely one of the most important things that any company dealing with documents who are regulated should look at. And site-level retention policies are now new to 2013, where not only can you, on a retention policy basis, obsolescence records, you can also obsolescence entire sites, libraries, et cetera, and so forth. So when you have a policy for a team site in a mailbox, this extends the import of the notion of records management and retention policies, because it's not just documents that can create a headache for an institution, it's also the information that exists inside a blog or a wiki or something to this effect. And so this extension of site retention policies to this broadening of its power has a great deal of benefit and unique benefit as it relates to SharePoint. So compared to a straight-up DMS, retention policies aren't going to do anything for your Drupal instance of your blog. By having everything within the 6 pillars that I referenced earlier, you have really great control over what you need to retain for the enterprise, both for legal purposes and, quite frankly, as I refer to it, as digital hygiene. E-discovery has also been extended inside the product. So e-discovery now supports searching for content and exporting content from file systems and Exchange as well. So now the ability to have this seamless integration between Exchange and your file systems, in addition to content in SharePoint, really has given you, and this is out of the box, is further extended the value of the product as it relates to ECM. Now, before, I'm going to introduce now the ISV partner ecosystem, while we work with certain third parties and the like. And I'm always at peril on a certain level when I start introducing third parties as a concept to prospective clients and existing clients, that somehow or another this means there's a deficit to SharePoint, and nothing could be further from the truth. Bruce Miller, who's a friend of ours and he's a records management expert, will tell you in his blogs and his articles and his various postings that truthfully, not just SharePoint, but IBM FileNet, Documentum, OpenText, Highland OnBase, all products need some assistance, if you will, both in terms of architectural design and potential third parties to be truly compliant platforms. And when you look at it and you buy the baseline of a Documentum plus add-ons, and then you look at SharePoint, really much less expensive, much more powerful. SharePoint is an amazing bargain as it relates to this stuff and has more benefit and, if you will, the same perceived downside as any other product set at that point. And so going into what this ISV partner ecosystem is about, the analogy I always give is if you look at somebody who builds a house, you may buy a starter home, that's SharePoint, it's the platform, it's the foundation of the house. But Gig Werks, and so it's Microsoft's role. The other end of that spectrum is the SI, or Gig Werks, who acts as both architect and general contractor. And in between are third-party independent software vendors who work with SharePoint, whose products that sit in SharePoint. That's one of our qualifiers, frankly. No magic black boxes, thank you. And extend the functionality of the product set along both horizontal and vertical need. And so within that example I was giving, they would represent the Anderson windows, the Kohler sinks and bath appliances. My statement being I made yesterday, you would no sooner chop down a tree and plain wood to build a door, you would actually go out and say, well, I want this manufacturer for a door. And that's what ISVs represent. And so ISVs, from our perspective, align to two major buckets along, functionality, roughly associating with the 6 pillars, and in kind also align very well to certain industries. So, there's search, which BA Insights, great company, particularly relevant to our legal friends. So they augment search but have particular applicability in legal. HiSoftware, who we'll talk a little bit about today, gives you reporting and it gives you compliance and security. But across the board, FinServ, legal, and pharma have absolute applicability. And so we look at these product sets for the quality of code, the strength of the firm, frankly, their relationship with Microsoft, because if they're not working closely with Microsoft, there's a chance that they won't be around long enough or be timely enough in terms of releases to support service packs and the like. So we go through a very rigid due diligence process here and have nothing but great regard and recognition of high value of these partners. These partners will come into play as we look at this cradle to grave of document management in general, right? So throughout the webcast series we're going to have in December, we're going to pivot off of 2 use cases. One is for life sciences. So it is not uncommon that all of a sudden, the FDA or something is found with a drug. So the drug manufacturer has to, required by law, contact all the doctors who have prescribed a particular drug within a time frame. Now, the creation of these documents requires information being pulled from an ERP system, a CRM, maybe an R&D system, and you have 48 hours to get this out in a compliant fashion. Financial services, the use case we're going to look at there is a common one, particularly for wealth management companies, on how to generate monthly end-of-year financial reports. Again, pulling information from a plethora of systems, and then the generation of them. So those use cases begin the beginning. They begin the creation of a document, and we'll be pivoting off of those 2 use cases over the coming weeks. Now, to address the document creation, we partner with Intelledox. Intelledox is a rather unique product set in the marketplace, been in business over 20-odd years, and we use Intelledox ourselves as part of our practice. What Intelledox does is it will take any number of inputs, URL-based inputs, web forms, data that sits in an ERP system, Oracle, SQL, Word snippets in the SharePoint library. It's really quite remarkable, the data points that the Infinity server from Intelledox can touch. In terms of its outputs, it can write back to a database and bring out documents and all those other things. Now, when you go to create, let me just go through this. So they have a wide range of use cases: legal advice, wealth management. I'm not going to read you the full list, but annual reports and legal advice, sales tools, construction, proposal construction, which is what we use it for. It's highly, widely applicable to a very large number of use cases. Now, before I don't want to kill you guys with slides. The issue with document creation as it relates to these kinds of standardized have to get them out quarterly, monthly, daily kind of documents is, again, rarely is the data that you're trying to do to assimilate in one place. It is, in fact, across many systems. And even today, in some of our very large Fortune 500 companies, you'll still see a great deal of, let me get a document of type of the last go-around, I'll do a save as, I'll do a global find and replace, let me pull up a spreadsheet, let me look in CRM. First off, it's wildly inefficient, it's onerous, and it is absolutely wrought with peril in terms of mistakes. Secondly, again, particularly within regulated industries, there is a requirement that you show that the creation of these documents were done in a compliant fashion. So Intelledox has a wizard, essentially. It's a dynamic wizard that creates documents, you template them, and will collect the information. There's no code, there's no custom forms, there's no version lock-in, and with this, end users can create documents of any type and nature that have been templated. It is not dependent upon IT. Once the wizard, once the connection's been built, the end users can go in, modify their wizard, do what they need to do without having to involve IT. And the output saves exponential amount of times. Something on the order of magnitude of 70 to 80% in reduction in the creation of documents. I can say with authority that certain proposals that would take me 10, 12 hours inside the shop, I got down to an hour or two now. And this is more timely for my clients. And for my own personal use, when we put out a document, everything from a proposal to a statement of work to a functional specification, we now have absolute positive uniform nature of nomenclature, of assumptions, of what we're going to deliver throughout the creation of several different documents, all of whom pivot off of the same base information, which in fact has given us a great deal of protection as we work with our clients. And this is the power of Intelledox. It's unbelievably flexible and intuitive to use, and really drives down the overhead of the creation of documents. It's business rules driven. The layout of the forms, you're not locked into Word or Excel. In fact, on the Word side, it's slicker than sliced bread. When it passes it over to Word for the technical folk in the audience, it'll pick up the header structure, write it dynamically on the fly. It's tremendous. It's aware of which user is inside the system. It has a drop and drag design tool, web interface, which is also key. All the stuff that we position here is .NET, is solid, is web-driven, and secure. And with the wizard, you're actually driven to answers and prompts. So think about it as well. You'll have somebody who's particularly gifted in creating a document for you. Well, you can put that lightning in a bottle and use Word for document layout and design. The ROI on Intelledox, it seems extraordinary, but I can tell you we've lived it. 70, 80% over the first year or two. This is based upon whether or not you're doing, the volume, of course. If you're doing one document a year, not so much. But if as an institution you're even doing 5,000 documents a month, which is not a lot. We have some institutions 10,000 a day, right? The ROI on this just grows exponentially the more you use it and the more output you have. Now, once we have this FDA, this document from pharma or this wealth statement created, it's great. We can now report against it, say that it was built with best practices. We can show the audit trail against its creation. We can absolutely report against, baked into the product, what those data sources were. We know everything is timely. And we've passed compliance hurdle number 1, as well as greatly improved efficiency in the creation of the document. Now that the document's been created and lives inside SharePoint, you now have to secure this document. All right, so you think about it. Once the document's created, it's now incumbent upon the institution to understand where it's going. Are people emailing it? Are they loading it onto a USB stick? Are they printing it? Who touched it last? All those kinds of things. The Graham-Leach Biley Act, it's up to a $100,000 fine per violation if you're not compliant with regulated information. So HiSoftware is our partner on compliance, really second to none. We've brought this to a lot of major institutions and clients at this point, And HiSoftware, which works with SharePoint as well as Office 365, it has a content-aware rules engine. So not only based upon metadata, but also based upon indexed values inside the document. HiSoftware will control and regulate its movement throughout the enterprise, notify you if people are trying to circumvent those governance rules and compliance rules, stop them in their tracks, let them know they can't do it, and extends all of that type of control across everywhere. Short of taking a photo of your screen, HiSoftware can regulate it throughout the enterprise, inclusive of file systems, blogs, and wikis. Going back to one of the things I found really snazzy about 2013, blogs and wikis themselves are also potential information leaks and compliance issues. So as it relates to HiSoftware, again, it's content aware based upon metadata and data inside an indexed document or list or library. And with it, it scans and audits at rest, in motion, in real time to detect non-compliant data and violations. Reporting, which is huge, so now the federales come in and they go, well, you know, how do we know that this, well, we actually thought a report that will show the full movement and securitization of that document in the enterprise. Classifies the data on the file level, and again, it's real time. One other thing I like to say about HiSoftware as an aside as well is that we all struggle with item level permissioning in SharePoint. Well, this kind of erodes some of the pressing need to lose your mind on that topic, because if it's content aware, well, item level permissioning is sort of brought to you through this. So you don't have to worry about it from an admin perspective at least as much as it relates to individual sites and libraries. Anyway, moving along, it restricts access to documents. It's based upon file permissions and metadata. It prevents publishing, distribution, email, all that stuff, you know, USB sticks, the whole bit. Uses workflows to fix issues, alert people, you know, override something, quarantine it. We're also big Nintex partners. Nintex sits on the back end as an OEM to this product. So, you know, in terms of workflows, they are absolutely using the best in the market. And track and monitor the movement of confidential and sensitive documents, right? Down to, again, printing, emailing, offloading via USB. So, you know, as it relates to financial services, just as a point of example, and again, if you have any regulatory against you, even if it's just basic compliance, this is obviously applicable. SEC regulated licensed traders, can't expose information, provides an audit trail of all users in the environment as it relates to documents in SharePoint. Again, this is universal across any professional services firm or manufacturer. The ability to build these automated workflows to ensure that sensitive and confidential information is properly classified, again, leveraging Nintex underneath the hood. And the prevention of anyone outside getting the information, encryption on the fly, not inconsequential. GLBA privacy information, and then all these very, very important information barriers like ISE Rule 810. Okay, so in terms of the challenges with records regulation that HiSoftware addresses is you have inconsistent record retention and disposition policies. End users don't adopt ECM for records or compliance workflow. You have unauthorized and unrestricted user access. I mean, you know, we also work with Metalogics and Exceller. So just AD permissioning on documents as you move around sites is just not easy all the time, especially in a large company. And whether or not you are disclosing to end users what they could even do with this information, it's confidential. You cannot. You have a legal obligation to notify end users of how content is allowed to be dealt with. And it really is difficult to enforce compliant workflow processes. So the more, so usability, user experience, the drum I beat. You don't want to make this onerous on end users. That's what technology is supposed to do, is allow your professionals to do their job without tying them up into time-consuming and onerous processes. And finishing with HiSoftware, next slide or so. As a summary, you can secure the sensitive information, the maintenance of compliance with regulatory mandates, and the reporting against it. Can't overemphasize that enough. The fact that you can take your investment in SharePoint, which is running your intranet, giving you business intelligence, giving you search, and really extend it so that you have this fully compliant management of documents within it, using those compliant, using classification with metadata and index values, securing mobile collaboration without having to erode anything else. So we've created a statement of wealth, or this FDA notification. We've done it in a timely fashion, auditable fashion. We've brought it into the enterprise. We've restricted who can get it where, what they can do with it. We can report against it. And while that document is now sitting in SharePoint with all that security against it, you are likely going to need to interact with it. It's going to become paper. You got to bring it back in. When you're viewing it, you have to be able to view it without damaging the original contents. You might need to redline or redact the document, but you don't want to do it to the originating document because now you've just bastardized its quality as a record. So we work with Accusoft and their Prism content suite of software. It connects to SharePoint, and so it has a content connector, runs and sends data in and out of SharePoint, and you can view and annotate over 300 different document types. So you're not stuck in the realm and province of just good old Office docs. You have a DWG or whatever other the file type might be, a PSD, doesn't matter. Accusoft can work with it. So you also look at the number of companies that end up having to buy Acrobat for PDF and this, that, and a whole bunch of other things. With Accusoft, which is very, 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 very reasonably priced add-on for our environments, you get this one single SKU that will allow you to PDF in the browser. And another thing, too, is again, even going back to Intelledox, all this stuff is browser-based. So your iPad users can actually go in and redact on an iPad without having to boot up a rich client. So annotation, the other thing that's unique about their annotation quality is that as you redline or redact the document, again for the technical folk in the audience, these are a series of XML overlays. You're not affecting the original document. And unique to the Prism suite is if you redact a block of text, well, most other systems will render the entire document into an image at that point. In the case of Accusoft, and once it's rendered into an image, you can no longer index or search the contents. In the case of Accusoft, when you redact this section or this section, all the rest of this content is still indexable and addressable via search. They also have some digital rights management capabilities. If you're looking for document rights management that doesn't require the full robustness of a HiSoftware, they do have features and functionality in that. And just briefly in Accusoft, that's to get it in, move it around, annotate it. And last but certainly not least is, all right, so we've created it, we've secured it, we've annotated it, redacted it, whole bit. What do we do with it then? And so with that, you get into records management. All right, so SharePoint, at least as of 2007, would pass 37 of the 168 elements to be truly DoD 5015 compliant. So not to kill folks on records management stuff, but this is what we're talking about today. And this, again, is true of IBM FileNet and EMC Documentum, et cetera, and so forth, that these systems have records capabilities, and I love the one in SharePoint. But if you have to deal with a higher standard on records management, if you have to pass audits, et cetera, and so forth, also the ease of use, always being the drum that I beat, we work with Collabware. So now the document has been declared a record. So as it relates to Collabware, first off, the control set really puts the control into the hands of records managers, right? So we've looked at a lot of products, and IT should be doing the heavy lifting of back-end stuff. They shouldn't be, IT should not be burdened with or keeping end users away from their core task. It should be specific to the end user's need. And in the case of Collabware, it is really written and designed for records managers and for the ease of use of records managers to do their job while maintaining compliance that goes up to this 168 standards. For those of you who are in anything that has to do with HIPAA or SEC, those standards, there's 105. So Collabware gets you all the way you need to go. It's rules-based for automatic categorization, so based upon metadata, it will automatically tag the record and manage it from the business process perspective. It enjoys global unique content identifiers, so it creates these unique alphanumerics. And again, it's rules-based, business rules-based. Like all these products as well, and particularly in the case of Collabware, this will run natively in SharePoint. Again, no magic black box. Couple other comments about Collabware as well. Any content can become a record. So again, you know, in the modern age of social and its constant extension into the enterprise, records are more than documents. They are now, in fact, list items, blogs, wikis, the entire page. And so with this, Collabware extends the notion of records management far and beyond what you would normally have in place, just like HiSoftware recognizing these other components of security. Collabware understands these extended notion of records management and has in place centralized storage. It will also manage physical paper, right? So you can have a hybridized solution, you can have it in place, you can move it around for the final disposition and retention. You know, the other things to keep really in mind as you look at records management is that you want to categorize before it's declared. So your categorization should be running again in that business rules engine. And then when completed, the provision or the access to an item level audit history. You know, you don't want to lose your mind by running IT so aggressively to keep up with these things. This is what these tool sets are for. So do it right, do it once, let the system handle the rest of what you need. And across what I think you'll see in these examples we're giving in these third parties, you're getting all the different levels of granular auditing you need to satisfy any number of either internal or external regulatory mandates. Additionally, Collabware allows for personalization, which means that depending on what your role in records management is, your user interface and what you can do will move with you based upon your credentials. And by using the records plan and the records planner within Collabware, your content is already categorized and ready to go from the very beginning, as soon as that Intelledox doc hits your library or any doc hits your library, based upon the metadata, like your content management, your records management just kicks in. The drivers and the challenges for true records management, pretty obvious: compliance failure and e-discovery, drum might beat long and loud, as well as productivity, right? You know, you need a single source of the truth, and again, you have to empower the end users. The challenges with this is stakeholder alignment, control versus user experience. You know, you'll look at systems that are very complex and very robust, and nobody will use them. Again, usability being the primary driver, I believe, of success throughout software, certainly within SharePoint. And change management. You don't want change management to be onerous, but you have to address it. So when you look at, like, particularly this statistic, that 40% of users can't find things, and you know how much time they're losing finding things, the ROI on these things also speaks well. Thank you for everybody's time. I'm Joe Gig Werks.